Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled NBC SNL Kill Box. I'm referring to Saturday Night Live, a television show that was created or attributed to Lorne Michaels, not his real name, he's Jewish. And this is a product of NBC, National Broadcasting Corporation. And this show was conceived in New York City, Manhattan, New York. Now, to really kick this show off, I'm going to talk about Lorne Michaels initially and give you a little background on him because really his fingerprints are all over this show. And he started out as a writer and a director, but he quickly became the producer and executive producer of Saturday Night Live. And I'm going to feature 7 deaths of his cast over the years at Saturday Night Live, 5 of which appear to be homicides, and one of them is officially a homicide, Phil Hartman. I just did a video on Phil Hartman and his estranged bipolar wife, Vicky Joe, who goes by Bren, who apparently shot him 3 times with a .38 caliber pistol on his bed in the bedroom of their high security home in Encino on Encino Avenue, just 1 block from Ventura Boulevard, where Stephen Twitch Boss was murdered. He was the executive producer of the Ellen show, Ellen DeGeneres, you know, of Anne Heche and Ellen DeGeneres lesbian relationship. Yeah, Twitch Boss lives in Encino, and he didn't take his car. He was either picked up by somebody and driven to the Oak Tree Motel, or he walked. I'm not exactly sure where Stephen Twitch Boss lived. Anyway, he blew his brains out in a room in the Oak Tree Motel, 250 yards away from where Phil Hartman had his head blown off. Yeah, near Embassy Drive and Encino Avenue. 5065 Encino Avenue, to be specific. All right, let's go back to Lorne Michaels, not his real name. His real name is Lorne David Lipowitz. He's Jewish. He's 78 years old. We don't even know where Lorne Lipowitz was born. There seems to be some controversy whether he was born in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, which is a CIA colony, if you didn't know. It's the headquarters for Pornhub. It's also where Stephanie Powers came from. That's where Mike Myers came out of. That's where Neil Young, the polio survivor, came out of CIA Toronto, Canada. But it's also looking like Lorne David Lipowitz Michaels came out of Palestine, Israel. The British created Palestinian nation. Perhaps he came from there. In any case, we don't really know, and Lorne Michaels isn't saying. He's not clarifying that. It's kind of like Noam Chomsky, Avron Noam Chomsky, where he likes to keep everything ambiguous. It's part of the applied linguistics confusion and chaos. The cackling cacophony of chaos that Kamala Harris has embraced. It's practiced by Lorne Michaels of Saturday Night Live. We don't know where he's from, but he is Jewish, and he partnered with Dick Ebersol, who was then the president of the NBC network, along with another Jewish man, Herb Schlesinger. I'm sure everyone's heard of Herb Schlesinger. I got that wrong. It's Herb Schlosser, who's originally from Atlantic City, New Jersey. And he died recently. He died August 6, 2021 in Manhattan, New York. Anyway, Herb, or Herbert, worked closely with Lorne Michaels, whose real name is Lipowitz, and of course, Dick Ebersol, to create in 1975 what was called Saturday Night. Now, they couldn't call it Saturday Night Live because they had promised Howard Cosell a late night show that was called Saturday Night Live with Howard Cosell. However, the Howard Cosell show was canceled within 6 months. So once Howard Cosell's stupid show got canceled, then they adopted the live Saturday Night Live, and but the show was created and conceived in 1975, became very popular by 1977. So anyway, I just want you to know that Lorne Michaels, who's the closest individual associated with SNL, is that, or the not ready for primetime players, I believe it's referred to, is he's Jewish from Palestine or Toronto, one of the two. Both are military and British intelligence, so it doesn't make any difference where Lauren Lipowitz is really from. However, that said, we all enjoyed Saturday Night Live for a while. I mean, certainly it had many years where it was unfunny and stupid. You do know that comedy and music are the two most effective ways to deliver social engineering propaganda messaging to a unexpecting audience that lets their guard down. That's something I learned very early in my life, that if you want to deliver social engineering false narratives, you can do it through the stage of entertainment, whether it's television, film, motion picture, radio, and theater, and of course, television presentations and musical bands. So the first not ready for primetime player to die was John Belushi. John Belushi was born in Chicago, Illinois, but he died in West Hollywood at the Chateau Marmont Hotel, which is right there, just about a block away from the Dolby Theater and the Chinese Man Theater. It's right there where it's rumored that Kirk Douglas raped Natalie Wood, whose real name, Natalie Wood's real name is Natasha Zakharenko, right? Natasha Zakharenko allegedly was raped at around age 15 or 16 at the Chateau Marmont Hotel, which is just down Laurel Canyon Boulevard from where she lived at 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive. That's a few houses away from where Frank Zappa lived for many years. Anyway, John Belushi died in some kind of a crazy heroin overdose, speedball, cocaine, heroin mixture. We don't really know. It's a lot of confusion. He certainly could have been murdered. He was 33 years old on March 5th, 1982, when John Belushi was pronounced dead. And he was 33 years old, and he died right there in West Hollywood. You do know that's where Janis Joplin died, about a block and a half away from where John Belushi died. She died at the Landmark Hotel in room 104 next to the Magic Castle. It might be 2.5 blocks away. It's very close. So that's where Janis Joplin was murdered or died in a similar way that John Belushi did of Saturday Night Live. This is also down the hill from where Inger Stevens was murdered. I'm going to call it a murder. This is a few blocks from where Ashley Ellerin was bayoneted 26 times to death near John Belushi. This is where Dominic Dunn's daughter, Dominique Dunn, where she was murdered. This is where Rebecca Schaefer, another Jewish girl, was murdered, allegedly by some crackpot fan from Phoenix, Arizona, who flew into town to strangle Rebecca Schaefer, who was killed in close proximity to John Belushi, and Lenny Bruce, the Jewish comedian, not his real name, it's Schneider. He's from Long Island. Lenny Bruce was murdered in a similar way that John Belushi was murdered, which was through heroin overdose. So, and this is also where Jack Cassidy was murdered. It's where Sal Mineo was murdered. It's where Diane Linklater was murdered. It's where Diane Linklater's brother-in-law, John Zweier, was murdered. It's where Connie Monty was murdered. Connie Monty is the across-the-street neighbor to Diane Linklater on North Horn Avenue. This is where Elvis Presley's co-star from Blue Hawaii, it's where she was murdered. I forgot her name. I'd mention it, but I forgot her name. There's so many names to remember. This is where Amy Harwick was murdered. This is where Lindsay Perlman was murdered in Runyon Canyon, which is walking distance from where John Belushi was murdered. Believe me, I'm leaving out a dozen other murders of young women in close proximity where John Belushi was done away with in West Hollywood at the Chateau Marmont. Okay. Then the second person of Saturday Night Live that was done away with was Michael O'Donoghue. He died in New York City on November 8th, 1994. He was a longtime writer of Saturday Night Live. He also appeared in dozens of sketches of Saturday Night Live. A lot of people, we don't know him because he wasn't one of the not ready for primetime players, not ready for primetime players that was featured. He was a writer mostly. He worked closely with the actors. But anyway, he took some medication and then woke up in a panic and then died of a brain aneurysm. Michael O'Donoghue, he was 54 years old, and he was the second person of the cast of Saturday Night Live to die under mysterious circumstances. The third character from Saturday Night Live, not ready for primetime players, was Chris Farley. He was born in Madison, Wisconsin, but he died in Chicago, Illinois, in the John Hancock Building, a building that I know something about. I've been in that building multiple times. I've been up to the observation deck. My understanding, it was a 98-floor building, but Wikipedia says it's 100 floors. I mean, I thought I went to the top floor. I know there's the roof, and they have a lot of 5G tower weaponry equipment above the observation deck now. Anyway, Chris Farley also died in a similar way that John Belushi died, which was a combination of drugs, overdose, not really clear if it was a murder or an accidental death or a suicide or whatever, right? Which is a lot of these actors die in ambiguous circumstances. So Chris Farley was done away with on December 18th, 1997 in the John Hancock Building. It's a mixed-use building. It's residential condominiums and it's offices for businesses. Oprah Winfrey also had a condominium there in the John Hancock Building. All right, so that's the third murder. We had John Belushi, then we had Michael O'Donoghue, then we have Chris Farley. Then the next murder, or death, I should say, was Gilda Radner. You may remember her from Roseanne Dana. That was my favorite character that Gilda Radner played. Also Barbara Walters, Barbara Wawa. Gilda Radner, my favorite character was Roseanne Dana. Anyway, she died of cancer on May 20th, 1989. Okay, so maybe I got that out of order. Yeah, she died before Chris Farley, and she died before Michael O'Donoghue. So it's John Belushi, but I'm not going to count Gilda Radner because that's not a murder. All right, then we have the only black not ready for primetime player was Denitra Vance. She played a black woman. Gilda Radner was 42 years old when she died. Denitra Vance was 40 years old. She also died of cancer on August 21st, 1994. Then I'm going to get back to my suspicious deaths. My next one is Phil Hartman. He was murdered by, it appears, his third wife, Vicky Jo Bren. And he was shot 3 times, and once right between the eyes in the middle of his forehead on May 29th, 1998, probably around 3 a.m. in the morning. 2:33 a.m. in the morning. All right, so then after that, we have a fellow by the name of Charles Adam Claveray. He goes by Charles Rocket. You know him from Dumb 'r Dumber Part 1. He played the villain in Dumb 'r Dumber, who shot a gun with empty bullet chambers at the Dumb 'r Dumber duo in the hotel in Aspen, Colorado. And his name was Charles Adams Claveray. He was married only one time in his life, and to his high school sweetheart, and he was ruled a suicide, which I am going to call poppycock on that. So he's got a slit throat, and he's found in a vacant lot, which is, I believe, part of his property in Connecticut. So when was the last time you thought about committing suicide using a knife which and then wandering outside and falling down in the undeveloped lot beside your home, as opposed to maybe laying down in the bathtub, right? That's how most people that slit their wrists, they do it in the bathtub. But no, this guy's outdoors and he's got a slit throat and he dies in the vacant lot there, and he's 56 years old. And I don't know what his problem is. He has a child. He's got one child. He has a wife. He's not divorced. He was in Dumb 'r Dumber. Charles Rocket, dead. All right. So let's review. I got John Belushi. I've got Michael O'Donoghue. I've got Chris Farley. I've got Phil Hartman. I've got Charles Adams Claveret. That's 5 potential murders, homicides. Then I've got Gilda Radner, who's cancer death at age 42. And I've got Denitra Vance, cancer death, age 42. So that's 7 deaths, but 5 of them look a lot like a homicide. And I got Lauren David Lipowitz, Lauren Michaels, as the captain of the ship, the Kill Box ship known as Saturday Night Live. Isn't that disturbing? I feel it's very disturbing. It's not a question of what Jewish managers are running these people. I think we know there's no exception. It's always a Jewish manager in charge of every production that goes out over the radio frequency, internet, Wi-Fi, Netflix, radio, mobile phone. Doesn't make any difference. Lauren David Lipowitz is going to be involved. He's still alive. He's 78 years old. By the way, Lauren has been married 3 times and divorced twice. I don't know if any of his wives have ended up dead. He was married to Rosie Schuster, Susan Forrestal, and he's apparently still married to Alice Berry. So he's not like Robert Shapira, a.k.a. Bob Evans, who was married and divorced 7 times. And he's Jewish, and he changed his name to sound less Jewish because his real name is Shapira, and he changed it to Evans. Robert Shapira became Bob Evans. Robert Shapira became Bob Evans. Robert Shapira became Bob Evans. Does that sound like a Jewish name, Evans? Or does Shapira seem Jewish? Right? See, about half the people changed their names to sound less Jewish. Like Oliver Silverstein Stone. He did. Or his parents did. Somebody did. And so did Lauren Michaels. All right, well, I guess that's all I have to tell you today. I'm not going to drill into the circumstances of all these cases, but I have 5 people who were associated with Saturday Night Live, not ready for primetime players, who died under very puzzling, mysterious circumstances. So I'm going to call Saturday Night Live a Kill Box television show, produced by Lauren Michaels, not his real name, Lipowitz. Thanks for listening. Feel free to share and like my videos. Take care.